Welcome to the Defeating Pain podcast with Dr. Ted Arkfeld. If you're tired of treatments that just don't work, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll talk about new ways to beat chronic pain using at-home therapies. You don't have to go to the doctor to feel better. Let's help you start living pain-free. Now, here's Dr. Arkfeld.
Welcome to the Defeating Pain podcast, where we uncover the truth about chronic pain and how you can take control of your healing journey. I'm Dr. Ted Arkfeld, and I'm so glad to be with you today. And I really want to express my appreciation for you taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know time and energy is a very precious commodity. I want you to know that I appreciate this so much, and that this whole podcast, the Defeating Pain podcast, I created it for you. I want to start by sharing something very deeply personal with you that is the reason I started this podcast, the reason I became a chiropractic doctor. You know, this podcast, it's my mission, it's my purpose, it's my life's work. You see, I grew up in a chronic pain family. I watched my father suffer every day. He was a strong man. He was a man's man, but pain didn't care. You see, in 1968, he was involved in a motor vehicle accident where he was T-boned. And quite honestly, any really Tri-8 or Tri-9 chiropractic student probably could have treated him very appropriately. But as the case was, he didn't go see a chiropractor back then. I was very young. I was in kindergarten, actually, at the time. And I remember just bits and pieces of what occurred. I do know that he came home and he had been in the hospital, and he came home and his low back was hurting, and it was hurting really bad. And as the days and weeks went on, that pain did not subside. He went to see his family doctor, who recommended him to an orthopedic surgeon. And once at the orthopedic surgeon, he was given a diagnosis of a hypermobile L4, L5, L5S1 segment down in the low back. Those are the last two vertebrae in the low back. So they recommend a spinal fusion, which really means they take a bone out of the hip bone, the pelvic, and they weld it or fuse it. And the thought was, if you weld those pieces together, that it would stop the excessive movement. Well, that didn't really work. And he continued to have pain. But, you know, I remember back then that kids could not go up to the hospital. They couldn't go into a hospital room. And I remember him walking out on the balcony, and he's in this full body cast, and he's waving at us. And I had a little sister. She was 3 years younger than me. And he's waving at us. And I just remember my dad being gone for long periods of time after the surgery. When he came home, I was instructed by my mother not to climb on him or try to play with him or anything like that, because he still had to heal up. Well, being in a body cast for weeks on end makes the muscles get weaker. It atrophies. And so even when he got out of that, his back was still hurting. Now, we lived in Lincoln, Nebraska. The Nebraska weather can be very brutal. And every time a cold front or every storm that came through, I saw him in pain. And he would try to push through it. He would try to push himself too hard sometimes, but he paid for it. Eventually, it took its toll. The chronic pain took its toll. And after 3 spinal fusions, he was given a full disability. He was never going to be able to do the work he did prior. He was a carpenter, finishing carpenter, and he was never going to be able to go back to that type of life, to that type of work. You know, when I was a little kid, I do remember every night before bed, I would say a simple prayer. God, please help my dad's back. I wanted so badly for him to be free from pain. But as a child, all I could do was watch and hope. And those memories were really burned into my soul. They became a driving force of why I became a doctor of chiropractic. My first chiropractic visit was when I was 7 years old. We all started as a family, and there were 6 of us in the family. And we all started going because my dad was going. But the problem was he was looking for a cure. And at that point, there was no cure. The structural damage had already done its number, and there was not going to be any cure. So there wasn't any active rehab or any physical therapy. He didn't go to any of that, not that I recall. So the back got weaker, and structurally, probably the surgery probably did about what it was supposed to do. But see, that's the whole purpose of this podcast. I want to talk about why you're still in pain, or somebody that you love is still in pain, even after surgery, or maybe not even after surgery, even just after a normal healing time has come and gone, because they're still looking at it from a structural point of view, and it's really neurological. This podcast isn't just about discussing pain, it's about defeating it. I want to give you the tools and knowledge that I wish my father had, so that you can take pain out to the woodshed and teach it who the boss is. It's about breaking the cycle so you and your loved ones don't have to suffer in silence. See, chronic pain it manifests in the whole family. There was times my dad just was not real fun to be around. I'll never forget the time that he quit smoking. He had gone to the doctor and they said, "John, if you don't quit smoking, you're going to lose your leg." He came home, had one more cigarette, and then quit cold turkey. That was my father. He wasn't going to do any chewing gum or anything like that. He quit cold turkey. But I guarantee you, there were some rough days during that time. There was some rough days all growing up because he was in chronic pain. Chronic pain eventually leads to a chronic pain family. And I grew up in that. And I'm very well aware what happens in a chronic pain family. And I know there's many of you that are out there right now that are fighting with this. So if you're watching this because you or someone you love is battling pain, know this. Please know this. There is hope. There are solutions. And together, we can find them. We can put them together. You see, for the last 4 years, I have been putting together home-based therapies because I realize that when you come into the office, you're in my office for about 30 minutes, and then could be another 48 hours before you come back. There's a huge amount of time that's wasted. You're at home and you're not getting anything done. Now, I always have patients that ask me, well, is there stretches I can do? What can we do at home? And I know they mean well, but I quit giving away stretches on paper years ago because I'd find them in the garbage can when I would leave the office at night. So I know you want things to do, and I've got things for you to do now. And that's what we're going to be covering as we go through the Defeating Pain podcast. I'm going to tell you why you're having the pain, why it's not been treated appropriately, why certain things are just quite honestly a waste of money, but more importantly, what you can do at home. You can draw a line in the sand right now, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to stop being a victim. And I know it's really easy for me to say that. I know that you've gone through a horrendous experience. You had some kind of injury. You've been to chiropractors. You maybe have had laser therapy, spinal decompression, epidural, surgery, rounds and rounds of physical therapy. And quite honestly, you're probably just losing hope. See, I practiced in a pain clinic for 3 years, and many of the patients coming in would look at me like, what am I doing here? What are you going to do as a chiropractor? Well, that got me going. That got me keep going back to school, to keep taking neurological classes, keep purchasing equipment so that we can put together protocols. And I use my clinic as a lab. And a lot of times I did treatment on myself to see what would work. So we do have protocols now that are very effective. So we can get you out of pain, or we can at least lower the pain. A patient comes in and on a scale of 0 to 10, they're at a 7, a constant 7. And it's been that way for months or maybe years. If we can relieve that by 50%, that's huge for them. If we can get them moving and get the neurological aspects back online, they're gonna feel so much better. And that's not just a physical. We have therapy in our office that helps you get out of that fight or flight, because pain's emotional. It affects certain parts of the brain, and you may not be sleeping at night, and it leads to anxiety and depression. And we have therapy for that. Quite honestly, I'm going to go through all that in this Defeating Pain podcast, because together we can do that. I'm here for you. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, please. Tell others. That's the only way that we can start this journey together and defeat pain together. So stay tuned. We're going to be having episode after episode, and I'm going to take you through this, because there is hope. We can get your pain reduced. We can get you out of pain. We can get you moving. We can get your life back. My goal is to make a difference in people's lives. That's why I'm doing this podcast as well. This isn't just to attract new patients in Gaylord, Michigan, or East Jordan, Michigan, where I have 2 offices. This is much bigger. This is about getting the word out to people in Michigan, getting the word out across the country, heck, even global. There's people suffering so much that just don't have anywhere to turn. Well, the Defeating Pain podcast was designed and was created for you, because I am on a mission to defeat pain. Let's do it together.